Yeah, I think to put the L3 into words, I think when we go through the level one, level two, that's very much, the textbook, the learning the base principles, getting those solidified. But the L3, I would say, is really just the application portion of it, right? Right. It's getting hands on and being able to make sure we can actually put all these things that we learned to use. And not just that, but also there's a lot that goes in on the communication side of things, right? Like none of these athletes know who you are. None of them owe you shit. And a lot of them even have like poor relationships with strength coaches because they've had negative, strength coaches at their colleges, or just in the past that have made them do a lot of shit that is not necessarily beneficial, to their improvement. So I think you have to be able to earn their trust pretty quickly, and part of that's being able to make fast decisions. And a lot of them will even ask you why you're doing, like, why are they doing what they're doing. Usually, like a lot of athletes can be like, not so involved in understanding what their training is, but a lot of them they'll fucking ask you. If you don't have a quick answer, they're not going to trust you. So I think there's a lot to be said about, being able to create a relationship fast, for whatever that's worth, but just earning trust, right? Getting them to buy into what you're doing, because if they're not going to buy into what you're doing, then, what are we here for?
Yeah, trust is a huge factor of it, especially in it's such a small, tight window that it's very, very fast paced. You have basically your day is scripted out. The majority of your day, hey, here's the itinerary. Here's where we're following it. Like you're just going into it that it's here, it's here, it's here. We have things planned out. So having to adapt with that, I think something that both of us have probably heard quite a bit was how do you prepare for L3? How do you prepare to try to develop that trust? What are some communication pieces that somebody could think about or could work on? And then on the application and exercise things, is there any advice that you could give to help somebody in preparation for taking L3 down the line?
Yeah, I think from like a training standpoint, I think just understanding basic progressions and regressions, understanding in training what box are you trying to check, and then understanding a few different ways to check that box. A lot of those guys are training with injuries. A lot of those guys won't even tell you that something hurts on them, even though you can tell, because they think if they tell you they're hurt, that they're not going to get paid, right? Being hurt is not good for getting drafted. So I think understanding, how to maybe not even progress and regress things, but how to find suitable options on the dime, how to make those adjustments, is very valuable. So just having understanding of which boxes you're trying to check. What are a few different ways to do that? That's one. I think two is understanding that you're still providing a service, right? Like these guys are getting ready to get paid a lot of money. So, treat them as if they're one of your clients, or as if they're just important people, right? Help them up off the ground, bring them water, like dap them up, say what's up to them, chat them up a little bit, like they treat them with good service, basically, right? Um, and then I think if you can make those quick decisions and you treat them with good service, they're going to buy into what you're doing. Like it's not super complicated to get them to buy in if you can manage those things. Now, if you're starting to hesitate, if something hurts and you can't adjust it, if they're asking you why you're doing something and you can't explain it, or if you're just like standing around making them get up on their own, you're not bringing them water, you're disinterested, like they're not going to buy into what you're doing. They're not going to trust you. Yeah, they've had 100 guys like you working with them in the past.
And that understanding of you're there to be of service and you're working with people, and even though anybody that's attending that, like they're wanting to get that experience, they're wanting to get the education out of it, but really being able to connect with the athletes, being able to connect with them on an individual basis, it is those small details. It's being aware of, hey, can I help here? Can I, whenever they want the explanation, more than happy to give it to them. Whenever they don't want it, recognize that, kind of find those cues to be able to provide that. But then also, it's just that interaction. It's just again treating them as, hey, you're a person and I'm here to help you get better. Like that's the point of any of the coaches that we have coming in, to help the athletes improve, to give them the training for that duration, to kind of focusing on that bigger picture of betterment towards the individuals and that population as a whole.
Yeah, kind of I guess a segue from that, talking about the bigger picture. One of the big takeaways I had from it was, I'm not a big track and field guy, right? I'm not coaching a lot of athletes how to run a 4.40 and broad jump 12 feet or whatever ridiculous shit they want to do. So like for me, I was just on the field because basically how the day was kind of laid out for those who aren't aware of kind of the format is we start the day on the track. Most days we're on the field doing field work. So whatever, acceleration, velocity, whatever agility stuff they want to do on that day, sprint mechanics, whatever, that's on the field. There's a break, and then we go in the weight room. And for the first iteration, it's all combine guys. I've already said that, but it's going to be different right now, what they're doing now. But anyways, understanding the weight room is supplemental to what they're doing on the field, right? We're not caring about football per se right now. We're caring about helping them run fast, and then also if they're dealing with injuries, helping them feel good because we don't want them to be hurt, right, going into a combine. So it's kind of understanding everything we do in the weight room, we need to be able to relate to them if they do ask, how is that helping them get faster or get better at certain drills? Because a lot of them are super stressed, right? I'd say almost all of them are super stressed. It's a big turning point in their lives. So being a sponge on the field and like picking up on some of the stuff that like Yo or Killian they're teaching to these guys. Now when we go into the weight room, we have some autonomy with the programming that we're going to do, but making sure we can identify, certain people's weak points and then help reinforce positions they need to get better in the weight room, and then tell them, hey, and Yo or Killian told you need to do this better on the field. Like, this is why we're doing this position here. It may not feel like running, but that's what he was talking about, and that's what we're doing here. Like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I get that.
Yeah, and being able to translate that information to, being able to meet the individual where they are to help them understand why they're doing that, why it's going to benefit them, why it can create longevity in their career. I think with a lot of these athletes, that's what we're looking at is that how I always describe athletes are they're the greatest compensators because they've been able, despite limitations, they've been able to figure out how to perform. And that's kind of what elevates them not only as an athlete, but as you start seeing deeper into more elite levels, even to professional levels, that they've been the best at figuring out how to work around any limitations that they might have, any composition or compensations. So they're the best at figuring or completing the task, to figuring it out. And where we have the opportunity working with athletes is essentially giving them more options, that whenever it is game mode, whenever they are in the field and they're doing the skill of their sport, that now they're not limited to one option, but they have a multitude of options and positions that they've been introduced to, that they've been exposed to, that they can choose to now utilize that they might not have before.
Yeah, I think that was honestly one of my biggest takeaways was one or two lines that Yo had when it's kind of the end of a day and a few of us were gathered around him and he's kind of talking about, his thoughts on the training and helping those guys develop as professionals. And what he said was, like, of course, like they're trying to run fast and bench whatever for the combine and look good for the scouts. But if anything, he was saying his goal for these guys is just to educate them on how to use their bodies, right? If anything, learn how to use their bodies better. And that's going to give them a much higher ROI in the future, right? They can do that. They can do a multitude of things differently to, their benefit. And they're going to have a much wider skill set to use on the field.
Yeah, that's it coming from somebody like Yo that is not only in the league for so long, but has been around so many guys and has helped so many athletes at different levels in their career path, that I think that perspective especially brings a lot of value to it. And taking that mentality, I think athletes appreciate that understanding. Hey, we're thinking about you. It could potentially be something that they've never heard before, because the unfortunate truth is sometimes athletes are seen as like, hey, how can you help me, coming from a coach's perspective, whether that's a their whether it's a university coach, a high school coach, but seeing them of how can this help me in my career as far as like win games, or in a weight room setting, hey, how can I get you to put big numbers up because it's a positive reflection on me, instead of really focusing on, hey, we're the things that we're doing, it's to help you, because I want to make sure that you're not limited in the ways that you can move, that we're being mindful of any previous injuries, that we're teaching you how to work around or how to understand the positions you've lost because of that injury, to redevelop them and to honestly create longevity in their career, because that's what every athlete needs. The longer that they can consistently play, the longer that they can stay in the league, the more money they're going to make, the more that they can help their families and help themselves. If you can help them achieve that, that can be life changing in the longevity of their career.
Yeah, it's always the way that I've looked at it too. Is like, obviously I think there's like a big crowd on the internet that gets in a tizzy when you talk about injury prevention in essence, but I think we can definitely talk about improving someone's movement variability and helping build exposure and resiliency in a variety of positions, and that's probably going to help mitigate some injuries, and they're probably going to be able to play longer, and it's probably going to be a net benefit for them. But I think even outside of that kind of a thought process, I got both like personally from a few athletes I've worked with, but also talking with Kyle Rogers a lot about baseball guys. I was asking him, I was like, is the goal here with some of this movement stuff to prevent Tommy John surgery, or is that kind of inevitable? And he's like, no, honestly, like a big part of it is like, so the skill coach can teach them to get like in different arm slots and get in different positions, right? So giving them the ability to now like kind of hone their tool set for actual pitching. And I see it too with like a kicker that I work with, like helping them be able to control their plant leg more and have, being able to, if they want to tweak certain things, have access to do that, right? Positionally speaking. Or even like the example I gave earlier, which is like getting lower pad level. It's like you're giving someone the ability to get into their hips better. They're probably gonna, when you say, hey, like drop your pad level, they're probably gonna be able to do that better, as opposed to just trying to like squat down and get all knee bendy, right? I think even outside of like the injury side of things, like there's value from a skill standpoint, right? Which is most important for sport, like get better at your skill. So it even can help the skill coaches out.